I was standing in my kitchen halfway through my first cup of coffee, not even awake enough to find my slippers, when Janice Larch barreled through my front door like she'd just been crowned queen of the neighborhood. She had that HOA clipboard clamped under her arm like she'd snatched the 10 Commandments off the mountain. And I swear her eyes lit up with that special glint you only see in people who genuinely enjoy making someone else's day worse. She barely paused for breath before declaring, "As of this morning, Room 2B is under homeowner association jurisdiction," like she was announcing a royal decree, not trespassing on my Tuesday morning. I just stood there, mug halfway to my mouth, watching as she yanked out a tape measure and started measuring the width of my guest room door, all while I was standing there in my ridiculous pajamas, cartoon clouds, lightning bolts, the works. She didn't care. "You may retain the kitchen and bathroom," she said, like she was doing me this huge favor. "But the second and third bedrooms will now be considered community hosting zones." I blinked. Twice. "You're annexing my house?" I managed. Janice just nodded, like she was sentencing me in court, and then she started spouting off about subsection 4A and something called the Social Utility Index. "Welcome to shared living, Ronald," she finished, as if that explained anything at all. "Let me back up a second. My name's Ronald Trawick, and I'm a semi-retired meteorologist. I moved out here to Lilac Pond Estates because, honestly, I just wanted some peace and quiet. The place looked perfect when I bought in. Quiet streets, 3-bedroom bungalow, not a single chain restaurant for miles. Sure, the lavender mailboxes were a little much, and those potluck dinners got old fast, but I kept my head down, my grass cut, and my opinions to myself. My home was my little bubble, decorated in the kind of boring, neutral tones that nobody can complain about. I slept in one bedroom, used the second as a weather office, and the third sat empty, just in case my sister ever decided to visit, which, let's be honest, wasn't happening. That is, until Janice Larch got herself elected HOA president. Janice, former improv teacher, self-described visionary, thought running the HOA was basically the same as running a Broadway show. First it was mandatory yoga, then some harebrained composting plan where we all had to share our food scraps like we were back in summer camp. But this room-sharing thing, this was her magnum opus. She called it Project Room Share, and, according to my neighbor Mrs. Chun, it was supposed to alleviate underutilized square footage. In HOA language, optional means absolutely mandatory. I only found out about it after the meeting, one I was definitely not invited to. Next morning, there's a letter taped to my door, Comic Sans and all, threatening penalties including possible eviction under the Neighborhood Harmony Clause if I didn't open up rooms 2A and 2B for community visitation rotation. I did what any normal person would, ignored it. 3 days later, I come home from the store, and Janice is standing in my driveway holding a folding cot and a lava lamp. Next to a guy who looked like he'd just wandered out of Burning Man. "This is Stuart," she beams. "He's between homes, but spiritually abundant. He'll be utilizing your community hosting zone immediately." Before I could protest, Stuart's in my house, trailing patchouli oil so strong I almost called hazmat. By the time I reached for my phone, he'd set up shop in the guest room and started burning incense that smelled like burnt rubber dipped in lavender. "This is trespassing," I managed. Janice didn't miss a beat, waving her stack of printouts. "According to the amended bylaws, which you agreed to when you bought here, failure to comply with community sharing constitutes a breach. Stuart is our first participant in the transitional housing program." Transitional housing. In my house. The real kicker? An $800 fine for emotional hostility toward a transitional resident. Stuart strolled out, wearing my good slippers. "Hey man, your shower's incredible. Mind if I borrow some shampoo?" I could barely string a sentence together. The next few days were like something out of a bad sitcom. Stuart started inviting friends. First it was just him, then this woman Bev shows up. She said she was a tarot reader, set up in my home office, and covered my weather charts with crystals and dream catchers. Kept telling me the high-pressure system over Nevada meant I needed to embrace change. You know what I mean? The universe apparently had plans for me, none of which involved privacy. I tried everything. Changed the locks. Janice had spare keys made. Called the police. Janice had already filed paperwork with them, saying Stuart and Bev were official HOA guests. The officer who showed up flipped through her paperwork, shrugged, and basically suggested I get a lawyer. So I did. He laughed, actually laughed, and then quoted me $3,000 just to read the HOA documents. Last resort, I started hauling Stuart's stuff out of my house myself. That's when Janice showed up with a film crew. An actual film crew. "This is perfect," she said, making them focus on me holding the lava lamp. Unauthorized handling of a transitional residence property. Another fine, Ronald. That's $2,400 now. I just stood there, lamp in hand, questioning my life choices. "You're clinging to an outdated model of property ownership," she lectured me, like I was the problem. "Private rooms are a luxury this community can't afford." "They're my rooms," I said. "I pay the mortgage." "And you pay HOA dues," she countered, "which means you've agreed to abide by community standards. By the way, your grass is looking long." That's another violation. My grass was within regulation, but I was starting to realize that facts didn't matter to Janice. Only her rules did. So I tried to evict Stuart and Bev legally, paid the fees, filed the paperwork, and thought I finally had them. That's when Janice played her ace. She reported me to the county for running an unauthorized rental operation. If they're living in your home and you're trying to evict them, you're a landlord without permits. County sends out an inspector, Tom, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Stuart offered him kombucha. Bev tried to read his palm. I just stood there, wondering if this was some kind of cosmic prank. But here's where things actually turned. Tom was thorough. He didn't just check my so-called rental violations. He started digging into the HOA itself. Wanted to see all the paperwork, every form. "Ms. Larch has filed 17 complaints this month alone," he muttered, scrolling through his tablet. "And what's this about a federal grant?" That caught my attention. Tom showed me the paperwork. Janice had applied for a $75,000 federal housing grant, listing my home as a designated community lodge. She'd made my house part of a federal application for her so-called housing initiative. That's when I realized she'd overplayed her hand. Tom called in the cavalry. Within 2 days, Lilac Pond Estates was swarming with county and state investigators, even a couple of guys in suits asking way too many questions about grant money. They interviewed every homeowner, reviewed years of HOA records, and discovered Janice had been busy, filing for 3 different state grants under various names, spending money on hot tubs, a vacation in Cabo, and bizarrely, a massive collection of ceramic frogs. Oh, and she'd installed hidden cameras in my house. Tiny things, tucked into smoke detectors. For monitoring, she said. The investigators had another word for it. Turns out, Stuart wasn't just a spiritually abundant friend. He was Janice's nephew, with a record for charity fraud involving orphan dolphins. Bev's real name was Margaret, and she'd been running a tarot business out of her Mazda to dodge taxes. She and Janice had met in some Facebook group for entrepreneurial spirits. You really can't make this stuff up. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, 12 minutes, tops. Janice was out, voted off unanimously, including her own vote. Not sure she realized what was happening. The state called it fraud, privacy invasion, grant abuse, you name it. The prosecutor offered Janice a deal. Plead guilty, pay restitution, avoid jail, or face trial, and up to 15 years. She took the deal, but the real punishment was the $135,000 in fines. Her house got foreclosed to pay it off. I showed up at the auction with $27 and a blessed for prosperity tarot card Bev had left behind. Nobody else bid. I converted Janice's old bedroom into a home theater, the Larch Pit. First movie I screened, a documentary on HOA abuse. Whole neighborhood showed up, even Stuart, though I made him stay on the porch. But the cherry on top? At sentencing, Janice stands up and declares she doesn't recognize the court because she's a sovereign citizen of Lilac Pond Estates. The judge barely looks up, adds another $5,000 for contempt, and Janice just sits there, silent for the first time in her life, realizing that HOA power trips don't mean a damn thing in the real world. Now, if you're sitting there thinking this story is too ridiculous to be true, let me just say, HOAs and power, man, they bring out something special in people. So, what do you think? Was I in the right to fight back, or should a community get to decide what happens behind closed doors? Drop your thoughts below, share your wildest HOA horror story, or just tell me what you'd do if someone tried to annex your guest room. I'll be reading the comments from my new home theater, with the doors locked, and no HOA clipboard in sight.